Speeches, questions.
Speeches, questions,
Question
between the two of you. Okay. And then if we've time, if we've enough interest, we'll go back out for another round of questions. And then 1 minute some speech.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, happy, ready? Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will start now the final in this Northern Ireland North qualifying round. The motion is that we should permit the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sport. I feel like I've been here before because I chaired this debate in the other room as well. On my right, we have for the motion Methodist College. Speaking first, we have Ben O'Kane. Would you like to introduce himself?
Yes, so I'm in lower sixth and studying physics, mathematics, further mathematics and chemistry at A-level, with aspirations to study mathematics at Harvard University in the United States. I enjoy playing and watching sports such as golf, rugby and football.
Okay, and speaking second, we have Ben Porter.
I'm Ben Porter and I attend Methodist College Belfast. I study politics, history and economics and wish to study PP at UCL and wish to pursue a career in politics.
Okay, and on my left, speaking against the motion, we have St Columns. Speaking first is Andrew Ross.
My name's Andrew. I'm head boy at St Columns College and I currently study biology, chemistry, maths and music. I hope to study medicine at Queen's. I play the saxophone and I play for the Derry Youth Jazz Band, and my role models are Jacqueline Smith and Pope Leo the 7th.
And speaking second, we have Michael Hegarty.
I also attend St Columns. I'm studying maths, biology, chemistry and Spanish. I hope to study medicine and apply to Oxford. I enjoy music and I play piano and trombone to grades 5 and 7 respectively. My favourite books Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and my heroes include Voltaire and Jacqueline Smith.
I can see a theme going on. And we also have three very esteemed judges. So nearest to me, we have Gary Adair, for a partner at Wilson Nesbitt Solicitors. Gary is a partner at Wilson Nesbitt Solicitors, specialising in criminal and civil litigation and human rights law. Gary graduated with a distinction from the Master of Legal Science course at this University Queen's and joined Wilson Nesbitt in 2006. He has been a partner since April 2015. He's a qualified solicitor advocate and is a member of the Mental Health Lawyers Association. He was also a semi-finalist in the Irish Times debating competition in 2011. In the middle of our judges, we have Gerard Hughes, an educational consultant and project manager at Sentinus. Gerard started work as a teacher, head of science, and then vice principal of a grammar school. For the past 18 years, he's been self-employed as an education consultant, engaged in contracts with Sentinus and Imperial College London. Gerard is a past president of the Institute of Biology of Ireland and currently sits on its council. He is actively involved as a member of the Northern Ireland Committee of the ASE and serves as a board member for the Irish American Alumni Association. And finally, furthest from me, we have Leslie Edgar, a NICE implementation facilitator, Northern Ireland, and the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. There we go, I got that. Leslie is a member of the NICE implementation field team, taking up posts in October 2012. Her role is to be the local face of NICE and is doing so, encourage, facilitate and promote the uptake of NICE guidance, advice and standards by all health and social care organisations and professionals in Northern Ireland. She's a pharmacist by profession, graduating from Queen's University Belfast, and still practices as a community pharmacist today. She has previously worked for the Health and Social Care Board, where her role had been to develop the Northern Ireland Medicines Formulary, and as well as heading up a team which provided all the prescribing information requirements for GPs in primary care. Apart from her pharmacy qualifications, she is a diplomat member of the Faculty of Public Health, and in 2012 she obtained a Master in Public Administration qualification from the University of Ulster. So if I can welcome our three judges today. Okay, so as I mentioned, the motion is we should permit the use of performance-enhancing drugs. The winner of this round will go through to the regional finals held in Glasgow later next year for a chance to go to the national finals. So, I said my name is Leo Evans, I'm your chair, and we'll get started with Ben O'Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, thank you, judges, and thank you most importantly to the House. I'd like to begin by talking about how anyone is brought up at a young age. Certainly myself, I was brought up with sport being told it was fair. Whoever works the hardest does the best in sport, and simply this is why Ben and I have decided to make it our aim to make sport as fair as possible. We feel that the perfection of the doping justice system is completely unattainable. As nice as it would be in a perfect society for us to be able to catch everyone who's ever doped, this is nearly impossible, as was seen in the recent WADA scandal. 3,000 results were published which would infer at least that some of these athletes may or may not have taken performance-enhancing drugs. This not only makes shames of people, but could possibly reduce participation in sport by making it seem as if sport is a place where everyone is viewed very harshly and criticised to as far as they want to be. As a second point, I'd like to bring up that people like to see records being broken. This is simply a fact. When Tiger Woods was at his peak, according to the CBS executives, the TV viewing figures went up by 50%. I think this clearly shows that the population are interested in seeing sport be as competitive and at as high a level as possible. To back up their argument, 1 in every 3 people in the UK watched Usain Bolt break the Olympic record at the 2012 Olympics. This may suggest, in fact, that this would increase morale in sport and morale throughout the nation, so I cannot see why people would not want to see Olympic records, world records, things like these broken. By increasing the morale of the nation and morale in sport, I feel we could increase participation. This may result in us being able to alleviate some of the problems which the UK currently has in people not participating enough in sport. The NHS currently spends $4 billion a year on obesity, and I certainly feel, as has been published, that most, if not all of this, could be alleviated or reduced by participation in sport increasing and more people getting out there and doing what, in my opinion at least, is frankly very enjoyable. As Ben will raise in his second argument, there is also a large cost to administering drug tests. I feel that this money could be better spent in other areas. With the current system, I feel there's also a large problem with athletes being scapegoated for things that, quite frankly, when they've done nothing wrong. Examples of this in the news include Paula Radcliffe, Mo Farah, and others. They have been put under pressure to release results which are probably completely fine, but due to the difficult interpretation of them, they could be scapegoated and people can villainise them. To conclude, I'd like to say that we think that the best way of implementing a fair system is by allowing performance-enhancing drugs so that anyone can perform to the best of their abilities.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can ask speakers to try and be as close to time as possible, make everyone's lives a bit easier. So if I can start now on the against motion with Andrew.
Ladies and gentlemen, the World Anti-Doping Agency categorises a performance-enhancing drug if it meets 2 of the following 3 criteria: if it enhances performance, if it's a danger to health, or if it's against the spirit of sport. I will focus on the spirit of sport, whilst my colleague Michael will focus on the danger to health. Toilet break. According to the WADA, the spirit of sport is the celebration of the human spirit, body and mind, and is characterised by the following values: ethics, fair play, health and excellence in performance. Allowing the use of performance-enhancing drugs would undermine 2 of these core values of sport, as not only would the health of the athletes be endangered, but the idea of fair play will be tarnished in 3 ways. Firstly, there will be a divide between athletes who take PEDs and those who take the moral high ground and choose not to, and it's simply unethical to deprive these athletes of a level playing field. Secondly, allowing the use of PEDs would further advantage rich countries as they are able to sustain more expensive and sophisticated doping programs. And thirdly, it isn't fair on past athletes who will see their world records decimated by these new steroid-fueled pill poppers. No longer will we get that buzz in seeing an athlete run faster, jump higher, or even throw further than any human has before, as we won't be able to distinguish between the human achievement or scientific innovation. The permittance of PEDs is a slippery slope that will have a catastrophic effect on an athlete's well-being. As we all know, athletes are arguably the most competitive breed of humans, and with that fact in mind, it is ridiculous to assume that all athletes will consume the same amount of PEDs. If one athlete consumes 10 milligrams of substance X, the next will consume 20, and the next 30. This vicious cycle will seriously endanger our athletes, and their very will to gain the upper hand will ultimately be their own demise. The Olympics is what most embodies the joyous celebration of sport, as it is the perfect illustration of how sport can bring people from all cultures together. After all, sport can unify us as humans. At its very simplest, it's one person's natural ability against another's. Any attempt to undermine this simple concept should not be recognised. And by allowing the use of PEDs, we will undermine this concept fully. The dedication and the sharpening of an athlete's natural ability will be belittled by the talents of their chemist. I'll end by saying this. We watch sport as we want to see the naturally gifted individuals perform at an elite level by perfecting their natural talent through hard work and dedication. We celebrate the competition, man versus man, woman versus woman, not AstraZeneca versus Pfizer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Those in the audience playing Debating Bingo will have got Slippery Slope. And I now move on to our next bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is our proposal that performance-enhancing drugs be legalised in sports. I believe that outlawing performance-enhancing drugs is unfair, it punishes those who obey the rules, and it decreases the competitiveness of sports and does not work for the benefit of athletes. The first point of my argument is that the current system is completely ineffective. Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France 7 consecutive times. After each time he won, he was tested. He avoided detection completely. It was not even the WADA, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, that actually found him out. It was the confessions of his teammates. Therefore, this system only punishes those who confess and obey the rules. The second part of my argument is that banning performing-enhancing substances does not make sports any fairer, as many teams already have inherent beneficial advantages, such as money, for example. For example, in the recent World Cup, we all know that New Zealand will have been training in significantly better conditions than, for example, Samoa, who will have not as much money in order to fund their training. The third part of my argument is that sport is about trying to be the best that you can be, and is being as competitive as possible. These laws prevent sports people from coming to their best, and therefore reducing the competitive element of sport, and possibly reducing public interest in sport. The health risks of many performance-enhancing drugs are often not as substantial as claimed. For example, in the top level of sport, there are already significant risks to health. As we see, overtraining is often a huge problem for athletes, and as we've seen with many football players and rugby players, it can have very detrimental effects to their future health. In conclusion, we believe that the current performance-enhancing drugs laws are ineffective at reducing the actual use of performance-enhancing drugs in sport. They reduce the competitiveness of sport, they reduce the interest in sport, they reduce the fairness of sport, and they are completely ineffective at detecting illegal behaviour, as seen in examples of people like Lance Armstrong, who cheated the system a total of 7 times. And that's the...
Thank you very much. Okay, I thank Ben and ask Michael to finish our speeches for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, with Andrew having outlined why promoting the use of doping in sport would undermine the spirit of sport, I will address how free-for-all doping would be a health danger to sports people of all ages and levels. EPO, used by Lance Armstrong, increases stress on an athlete's heart due to a larger number of red blood cells in the body. This in turn increases the risk of blood clotting and strokes. And anabolic agents, for example, can damage the liver and cause impotence in men. And the US ADA website lists similarly horrible side effects for a different range of PEDs. It would be unwise at best and downright evil at worst to actively foster a culture in which athletes must take these harmful drugs to even stand a chance of competing. Ironically, being an elite athlete and having a healthy lifestyle would become incompatible. This leads me on to my next point. The youngest competitor at the last Olympic Games was 13-year-old swimmer Rebecca Azzo-Capozzi. If doping were to be committed, as the proposition suggests, 2 scenarios could arise. Either children are not allowed to dope and therefore do not stand a chance of competing at such high levels, or alternatively, we do subject children to these treatments and deal with the horrendous consequences. For example, some types of steroids are used medically to treat delayed puberty. If these were used on healthy young teenagers, the accelerated puberty process could cause stunted growth and a range of other problems. Neither is fair, so for the sake of child athletes, the fair solution is to continue to allow them to hone their natural talents and be able to compete at the highest possible level that their skill merits. Some child athletes are already using banned substances. With free-for-all doping, this problem would spiral out of control. Amateurs will always emanate to professionals in the hopes of recreating their success. Allowing performance-enhancing drugs will promote uninformed use amongst amateurs. Obviously, the risk of a potential overdose is a serious danger, but there are other less obvious risks. For example, in treatments involving blood transfusion, unsterilised equipment could spell an infection with HIV or hepatitis. The introduction of doping to highly physical sports such as MMA will have serious consequences. Testosterone injections can raise aggression, and this will increase the risk of injury to the participants. It's one thing to have fully grown adults fighting each other for sport, but to add unwieldy drugs into the equation would cause problems. And we can all agree that a drugged up Conor McGregor would be an unruly ubermensch that we must not allow to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there is no logic whatsoever in permitting performance enhancing drugs in sport. We must allow the essence of sport to flourish. We must allow athletes to succeed without damaging their health, and we must not permit the use of performance enhancing drugs. Free-for-all doping will thrust sport into a relegation zone from which we may never escape. Thanks very much.
And I thank our 4 speakers for their contributions so far. So, some columns, take a few moments, relax and enjoy. Well, I'll start with the judges' questions. Firstly, for Methodist, can I start with Gary?
You referred to Tiger Woods being viewed at his height by significant numbers, and you took the inference from that to be that the audience liked to see that records are being broken. Would it not be equally possible that people tuned in recorded numbers because Tiger Woods was a fine sportsman, and they wouldn't have tuned in such numbers if he was simply the golfer that had taken those drugs?
Okay, thank you. And Jared?
Certainly with the point that the opposition here mentioned is the dangers to have. That's a huge issue. I've been involved in sport myself and coaching. How would you, if you're going to allow, free access to performance enhancing drugs, how are you going to police it? Because it's good, certainly if you take the example of weightlifters, mortality rate and people who literally pump themselves with steroids is very, very high. How are you going to police it then if you're going to give them access to PEDs?
Okay, and finally Leslie.
Just going to give a scenario. If you were competing in a 100-metre sprint and you came second, and the person who came in first place was somebody pumped up on steroids and taking erythropoietin, would you not feel cheated out of your first place? Is it morally right to allow differences in sport?
Well, I'll answer Leslie's question first. I don't think I would feel particularly cheated if I was given the same opportunity. Sport is about the rules being the same for everyone, which they currently aren't, because many athletes use performance-enhancing drugs going under the radar of the detecting organisations, and this just means that people who obey the rules are punished, and that is just simply not fair.
Okay, so to reply to Gary's point, he made a point about how Tiger Woods, possibly they were tuning in because they thought he was so fine a sportsman. I think that what defines a fine sportsman would change under the new definition of if we were to allow performance-enhancing drugs. If everyone was allowed performance-enhancing drugs, then surely fine sportsmen would simply be defined by how good they were at sport and not morality. So my point, if I could kind of sum up, would be that I don't know about the rest of the population, but I'm certainly interested in seeing the best results come out, and I think that if we were to level the playing field, then the fine sportsmen would truly be the people who are best at the sport.
I'm just going to address the risk to health question from Gerard. There are already significant risks to playing sport. For example, Fabrice Mamba, who is speculated to have overtrained to the point where he had a heart attack on the pitch. I think it's up to the athletes what they think is suitable for them in terms of what is safe for them and what they can handle.
Okay. Would judges like to take them up on any of those points?
Well, back to that whole business of I don't accept that there are dangers in simply walking down the street, and there are dangers. Those dangers are enhanced by participation in certain sports, and maybe all sports. But still, how do you police an open system where people have free access to PEDs? You haven't really addressed how you would police it.
I don't think that. I think that under the new system, the PED policing would be non-existent, as harsh as it sounds. I think that if athletes want to pump themselves completely full of drugs, that is their choice. And if they want to put their lives at risk to win, then that should be their decision. If we want to see if someone truly wants to win, then why are you in the right to stop them and say, no, you can't win because we're not going to let you do what you want to do?
What about the business of role models? Adult sports people who are role models. What sort of a role model is that to give to a young person?
Well, I think it's obviously maybe not the desirable thing for athletes to be pumped full of drugs, but I do think that it's their decision to make, and the fact that these people are looked up to as role models is somewhat of a shame if they pump themselves full of drugs. It's maybe, wrong for their health, but it is their choice. Essentially, it's about how they feel they can win, or how they feel they can be the most competitive at their sport.
So just to add something to that, I would say that it's simply an ethical choice by the athlete as to whether they want to be viewed up to, rather than the choice of the system is to say you have to be viewed up to because you're winning titles. I think that if someone is winning titles, that is theirs to win, and if they're looked up to, so be it, but at their call, they should be looked up to.
Okay. Gary, Leslie, you satisfied with the answers you got?
One of the things you said was that the current playing field is unfair because of the different resources of various countries. So surely that's going to be exactly the same when it comes to this aspect of doping or drugs, that the richer countries will be able to have the better drugs in the same way as the richer countries can now afford the best training facilities or the best technology when it comes to sports like cycling.
That may be true, but it's still drugs will not become the main advantage that people think there are. People can't just go from not being an athlete to, they take some steroids and then they can win the Olympics. There is still work involved, and the system is already unfair, and we think that it's creating extra unfairness to make performance-enhancing drugs illegal.
Leslie, have you anything to come back to?
No, but I don't think you fully answered the question about the moral side of it.
All right.
You're saying basically that it's a level playing field, let them do what they want. But is it morally right to physically enhance your body through inappropriate and perhaps unnatural ways? Surely your performance should be within a gym and your diet and things like that, not artificial.
So I'd say that not only is the way that athletes are training evolving, so if you look back 200, 300 years, the way athletes were preparing to run a race is entirely different to how they're preparing now. So why are we not allowing an evolution to occur whereby we're setting faster and faster times? I think that sport, as harsh as it sounds, sport and ethics have to be different. Sport is about winning, and ethics are about being nice or being the best person. And in my opinion, at least, I think sport should come down to the winner and not who has not taken the drugs or who has taken the most drugs.
But that's like making us all have amphetamine so that we work 20-hour days and keep on going. That's the same sort of thing.
It would still be up to the choice of the athlete whether they think that the drugs will help them. I mean, it still requires hard work, even if you are using blood doping. Again, as I said, I can't, go from where I am now to, I blood dope and then I win the Olympics. It's not. The only factor in sport won't just be how many performance-enhancing drugs you take. There will still be hard work involved, and natural ability will still play its part.
Okay, so I'm going to move on now to questions for the other side. So you can now take a few minutes and relax as well. So I'll start again with Gary. If you have any questions for some columns?
Yeah, you're against allowing doping doping in sport, but if I were to say that doping's already allowed at the moment in the form of, for example, altitude training for athletes or athletes that come from countries which are at high altitude or athletes that sleep on horses and things, that those advantages are available to certain people over other athletes who either don't have the resources to train in that environment or aren't from those countries. How would you reconcile that argument?
Okay, and Cheryl?
One of the things that you mentioned was this whole idea about, the core values of sport and the principles behind really what sport is and what it should achieve. Humans are different. I was born with asthma, right? So that leaves me at a disadvantage. Now, how do you reconcile this complete ban when physiologically people are different, okay, and to level that playing field and give everybody an equal opportunity, so they're not excluded access to sport. For example, if somebody has a deficiency in a particular area, whatever that area may be, for example, somebody with non-directive thyroid or somebody with asthma, should they be allowed to take certain medications, for example, at a certain level? Would you find that acceptable? For example, more adrenaline if in case of asthma.
Okay, and finally, Liz.
Okay, I would say that performance-enhancing drugs are on a spectrum, ranging from the more potent anabolic steroids, the EPO, right through to naturally occurring amino acids in food supplements, nasal spray. We have a blocked nose. Should there not be a review of the classification of PEDs rather than a total allowance or ban?
Well, first I'd like to start with Guy's question. So, doping's already allowed, you said, in altitude training, such as what I believe is altitude training is sort of a beautiful thing in the way it's your body making the extra red blood cells, if you know what I mean. It's a natural enhancement of your performance. The same way for going for a jog or lifting weights, you're naturally enhancing your body's capability of performing at the highest level by going up a couple of 1,000 feet and jogging there. You know what I mean? You're generating your own red blood cells. There's no artificial scientific innovations where you're getting injected with EPO, as I say, or you're given anabolic steroids to produce it. Like, there's no pills, there's no injections. It's all your own body's work and giving you that extra edge. Would you like to?
Can I start that and say that fair enough, that is an inequality like this in sports, but I don't see that as a reason to add doping programs, which, as Andrew outlined, would pose another inequality. So I don't see how making the situation even worse would be a solution. And if I could come to Gary's point, I do agree that sports should be accessible to all people at some levels, but elite athletes they're physical anomalies, they're genetic anomalies, and it's the celebration of those combination of factors. That's what sports all about. So, and I also think we have to distinguish like medical treatments and performance enhancing treatments. What you're saying about asthma, that would be more medical treatment, but I think performance enhancing drugs do have no place in making just everyone an elite athlete.
And that is the beauty of what athletics and sports is all about. It's about pushing the extremes of humanity in a natural fashion. It's seeing what we can do ourselves with our own body and the way we diet and the way we train. And I feel like the implementation of performance enhancing drugs will completely negate all the build-up, all the history of sport itself, and lead up to the present day, or if that day ever came. For Leslie's question about the spectrum of performance enhancing drugs, as I defined at the start, the World Anti-Doping Agency has a very strict guidelines on what is a performance enhancing drug. So if it does enhance performance, then once again it creates an imbalance, and an artificial imbalance at that. It's not through your extra hours in the gym that you're gaining an advantage, or your cut down of donuts at the weekend gaining your advantage. It's the chemicals you're ingesting, in what shape or form they come, it still enhances your performance and is against the spirit of sport according to the WADA.
I can just add that. I'd like to come back to the thing I said to Jared about the importance to distinguish between medical treatments and performance enhancing treatments. So fair enough, things like nasal spray might be medically useful, but if you're using that to gain an unfair advantage, or if you're taking a drug that gives you an advantage at the expense of your health, then I think there's a problem, and drugs like that have no place in sport.
Okay, have you anything you want to bring up, any of the judges?
What do you say? The other team have raised the issue that high-profile cases like the likes of Lance Armstrong's, where performance-enhancing drugs are being used, they're going under the radar, they're not being caught, and that is causing unfairness to those who don't partake in them at the moment, and by opening up so that everyone can use them, that will level the playing field.
I was actually quite surprised that Ben O'Kane, is it? Yeah, actually said that he was a self-professed sportsman, and then went on to say they're impossible to catch, so let's let everyone do it. That to me is admitting defeat, which is quite unusual for a sportsman. So I think we should instead focus our efforts on eradicating them completely, rather than just having complete free-for-all doping culture.
One thing as well I noticed about the proposition's argument is they were only really able to mention one high-profile case as an example, which is Lance Armstrong, brought up quite a lot. And what I have to say is that he was caught eventually, and now he's been slandered as a cheat, and rightfully so. He doesn't deserve to take those drugs while other cyclists are coming at that advantage because of him artificially enhancing his performance through what he took EPOs. And I just think that's morally and ethically wrong and against the spirit of sport.
What answer is that to those who came second to him in the competition? I mean, can you name any of them, for example? Everyone in the room can come and name Lance Armstrong. Nobody can name the people who came second to him.
That's exactly why this doping culture is so unfair. Like, the people who finished highest without taking any form of performance-enhancing drug were robbed. And that's why we should instead focus on eradicating this doping culture rather than actively promoting it.
And what I also would add to that point is that I think Lance Armstrong is no longer famous but infamous for what he done to his fellow competitors. If he can face them now, it's against the sport. What I'm trying to say is that it is against the spirit of sport. His fellow competitors were robbed of what they rightfully deserved because of his unlawful antics. And as a sportsman myself, even though my stature might not show it, I'm a wonder man. When a fellow competitor cheats, goes against the rules, goes against the ethics and morals, the basis of the spirit of sport, it's a kick in the teeth.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Hopefully not a literal kick in the teeth at times. That would be cheating. Right, now going to move on to questions from the floor. So, oh good, we've got hands already. Oh wow, okay. Well, last time I had nobody, so that's good. If you can please give your name, your school, and which side your question is to, because that makes my life a bit easier, it makes all the judges' lives a bit easier, and everybody will be happy then. So if I can start with, where am I going to go? Here.
Annie Doherty, Oak Grove, and my question's for the proposition. Ben O'Kane, you mentioned in your speech the fact that if performance-enhancing drugs were taken, it might be more of a motivation for people such as obese people to take part in sport. What do you say to the point that if obese people see athletes taking drugs instead of seeing the athletes training, that's what they're going to follow rather than the training that the athletes are completing?
Okay, and here.
Conor Lyons in Columns College for the proposition. The point the scenario Leslie said about coming second in a race compared to someone who took performance-enhancing drugs. You were saying how people winning constantly go under the radar from taking drugs, and that it's the people who don't take these performance-enhancing drugs that are getting punished. Are you suggesting that it's them who are doing the wrong thing by breaking the rules compared to the people who are playing sports in a fair way and following the rules that are doing wrong?
Okay, bring comes down here.
Ben Cade from Doriata School of Balmoney. You mentioned
which side's it to, sorry?
Proposition. You mentioned Usain Bolt breaking the record and how this was like exciting for people. but this was due to his natural talent, and that's why he was celebrated. Comparatively speaking, the fastest 100-meter runner this year was Justin Gatlin. He was despised by the public. He is the fastest 100-meter time for this year, and he was despised for the public due to his unnatural talent. So, use of past PEDs. So why is this? Your suggestion that PEDs will enhance people's like of sport for increasing speeds is really true.
Okay, I've had 3 questions for these guys. I'd like 3 questions for these guys, so I'll start here.
Rachel Hastings, Ariana School. You said about the unsterile needles and how they're dangerous, but do you not think that legalising performance-enhancing drugs would make it safer? Because people wouldn't have to go onto the radar and go to the black market for this sort of equipment, and they could do it in a safe and controlled environment?
Okay, and straight behind you.
You talked a lot about how...
Sorry, name, school, and which side?
Thomas and you talked a lot about hard work, how legalization of PEDs would actually help overcome genetic disadvantage that would make fear of anything, and that would mean that sport would truly be based on hard work alone as opposed to genetic
Yeah, and one last question. I'll go on back row yourself.
Dr. Wire, Henry Methodist College. This is studio opposition. Your thesis that we basically practice that performance-enhancing drugs are unnatural, but I would contend that the extreme training and extreme diets that athletes go through at the moment is in itself unnatural, and the amount of science behind their training and down to even the shoes that they're wearing whenever they run the race is unnatural. So that there's a distinction between that extreme training and
Okay, so we've got 3 questions for each side. If we've time, I'll come out for another round, if we've time. But I'll start firstly with Methody, if you want to answer those questions in any order, whatever fashion.
So to respond to Annie's point, which was made first, you raised the point that if obese people were watching sport and seeing people taking drugs, then this would just simply erase any interest they had in sport. I'd actually quite frankly disagree with the point, because as was raised in some of the other questions, in fact, the extreme training regimes which the athletes have to go through, whether they take performance enhancing drugs or not, is quite frankly ridiculous. The athletes can be training all day, every day for 4 years to achieve nothing if they don't win a medal at the Olympic Games. Saying that the obese people will only see them taking drugs, and this is the only reason that they will see behind them winning medals, is, I think, quite narrow-mindedly looking at how obese people are going to look at these people winning medals. And in fact, they would see them as whole people and see their training regimes, everything they're doing, not just see them taking drugs.
You made a point about us saying that it goes under the radar, and that instead of letting things just legalising and all, we should clamp down on it. But we have to be realistic about we're never going to catch everyone who does PEDs, and we have to be pragmatic in our the way we look at the issue and say, even if we have a moral objection, it's still the athlete's choice whether they want to do it or not, and that it levels out the playing field, because it makes it fairer for athletes so they can choose how they wish to train and how they wish to win. So then the third point.
The point was raised by Ben about natural talent and Usain Bolt breaking the record. I think that people would see that if Usain Bolt was to take PEDs, everybody else in the field was to be taking PEDs, then the record would not only be broken due to the fact that he was taking PEDs, but because he was simply more physically capable and had done more training in the gym than everybody else. And then you went on to mention Justin Gatlin. Actually, I'd like to bring up the case of Justin Gatlin, because Justin Gatlin has not tested positive for a PED since the ban he was enforced with. And there is some, but not any certain evidence that the PEDs which he took are still having any effect on his running skill, or the fact that he is achieving such great heights. In fact, the pressure which he has been put under by people like you, saying, well, he took PEDs, he's a bad guy, has meant that he and his family, his relationships, have been put under extreme pressure. And in fact, the depression which he's suffering from those kinds of things could in fact be greater than the depression he's suffering from, if any, that he got from the PEDs.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys the same amount of time to answer questions as well. So,
I'd just like to start with Rachel's point about how it's a sort of black market, and how the native-born diseases are going to be less common now. But what I find is that these people aren't going to be going to the streets to a dealer to get an injection. It's obviously going to be a very somewhat sophisticated way of injecting steroids in their body. But what we more focus on for this side of the argument is that if we permit the use of performance-enhancing drugs in sports, we are also permitting that for amateurs. And what you have to realise is about the grassroots level, the clubs that may not have the same facilities or the sanitary requirements for these injections, but they compete with their fellow cohorts. They have to. It's a requirement now. They have to sacrifice their health, risk disease, just to stay at a competitive level. Not even to gain an upper hand, but to stay at a competitive level. And I just think that's morally wrong.
I'll just go on to Thomas's question. You implied that regulated doping would eradicate cheating completely, and the simple fact is, it just won't. Like, athletes will always find a way to cheat and take more drugs than should be regulated. And the proposition we're saying earlier, how regulation is already incredibly difficult, and I don't see how legalising regulated doping would improve that.
And for Jack's point, you were talking about how there's so much science already in sports, but what I believe is this: there's nothing being injected or taken, or there's nothing harming our natural self. As I say, the spirit of sport is about the spirit, the body and the mind. It's not about our clothing or what we wear. And also the fact about there's like training, diets, it's all very scientific at this point, but you have to think about the amount of hours they put in and the amount of temptations they have to turn down. Like, training and diet takes discipline, whereas going to your GPs to get a simple injection to make you run a second faster won't. And I mean, yeah.
I just like to reinforce what you said. Training, they have to make family sacrifices and give up other recreational activities to put in the hours for training, and they might have to give up some of their favorite foods if they're following a very strict diet. All of that takes discipline, which an injection with the steroid doesn't.
I think that's why most of society sees them as role models, is because of their high level of discipline, their willingness to sacrifice everything just to run that second faster. It gives us a great example of how to dedicate ourselves and work hard to achieve. There's no shortcut in life, and there should be no shortcut in sports.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're now going to go on to what is every time my favourite part of the debate, which is the team exchanges. So I'm going to start by asking you guys if you can ask a question to. So for some columns to ask question to Methody.
One issue I did raise earlier, which I thought was quite a crucial issue in this debate but hasn't really been touched on since, is child athletes. You have 13, 14, 15 year olds competing at high levels like the Olympics. You even have 16, 17 year olds in the Premier League. Do you think that even giving these child athletes the option of taking these performance enhancing drugs would be viable? And if so, how do you deal with the horrendous health consequences?
Well, I think to a certain extent child athletes are sort of a special case in the performance enhancing drug issue, because obviously some of the performance enhancing drugs are dangerous, and it should maybe be regulated to a greater extent with children. Maybe more harmful performance enhancing drugs should not be allowed for them, or there should be some sort of system established where children are still protected. But it's still most athletes are adults, and it is still so we have to work for their benefit mostly, and not entirely for the benefit of the child athletes.
You also seem to be implying somewhat that in the current system, children are not taking any performance-enhancing drugs. I think, as far as I'm aware at least, in the Russian athletics team, who were recently kind of slammed by the press, there are child athletes who quite possibly were taking performance-enhancing drugs, and we're suggesting that this will happen in the future system, and it's happening now. So we want regulation that ensures the safety of the athletes is kept, and it's not an underground black market where it's very unclear and shady as to what's right and what's wrong.
I am aware that there are Russian child athletes taking drugs, and I think it's despicable, and I'm not ignoring the fact that it's happening, but I think that it does need to be sorted out, and eradicating the drugs culture and taking more measures to prohibit doping from sport rather than promoting it is the best step forward to protect not only child athletes but athletes as a whole.
And what I'd like to say about Ben Potter's original point is that would you feel morally right to deprive a 13-year-old child, as Michael said, a chance to swim in the Olympics because they're so naturally gifted? They've worked hard for 5-6 years, they've worked all their life towards this moment, but because they're not old enough to take a performance-enhancing drug, they can't compete with their fellow cohorts.
The proposition seems to be suggesting that they want fair sport, and they want sport where natural talent is promoted. Natural talent inherently is not fair because everybody doesn't have the same genes, the same genetic makeup, and everybody doesn't have the same natural chance. Usain Bolt is 6'5" and has limbs the size of larger than anybody else in the field, and it is for this reason, or simply one of the reasons is that he this is one of the reasons, that he can go ahead and set Olympic records. If everyone was to have the same level of natural talent, fair enough, but everyone does not have the same level of natural talent, and this needs to be, in some way, we need to make it more fair by implementing performance-enhancing drugs.
You also suggested that child athletes are protected by being forced into an unregulated black market, and I don't think that's the case. I think black markets are extremely unsafe, and regulation is usually a better solution than just banning it outright.
Okay, I'm gonna stop because of time, so I'm gonna ask it to swap around. So can I ask you guys to answer a question to this side?
So one of the key points which seemed to be made by the first speaker on the opposition was that everything that is done is very natural, and you're not inserting any chemicals or anything into your body whenever you're doing the kinds of training which he suggests. In fact, some forms of doping, such as blood doping, you produce all of your own red blood cells. They're taken out, they're frozen, and then they're added back in before a large race. There's no chemicals added here. It's simply you produced red blood cells whenever you trained hard or went at altitude. They've been frozen and they've been re-added. I cannot see how this is an artificial form of doping, or how this is artificial.
Well, there's two main things I'd like to touch on that. Firstly is that it's a performance enhancing drug because it is performance enhancing by taking out your red blood cells and freezing them, or whatever detail you went into. But the main thing I think is that how can you say that it's not artificial to take blood out of your own body and put it in a freezer and then defreeze it and put it back into your body to enhance performance?
But how can you say that it's not artificial to get some protein powder and drink it? Protein powder does not occur naturally, but yet athletes will still use it.
And if you're suggesting that taking blood out of your body and freezing it is very unnatural, then surely you are totally against blood banks, blood transfusions, things like this. You want people to die because they can't receive blood.
Firstly, I think that's a very ridiculous claim that I want people to die. No. The second thing is that's completely different argument. That's about saving lives. That's not about enhancing performance. I don't think anybody that needs a blood transfusion will be competing in the Olympics in 2016. What I'm trying to say is that, as well with the protein powder, that occurs naturally in food though, like frozen blood doesn't. I don't know what you're trying to say.
But red blood cells do occur naturally in your body.
Exactly, in your body, not outside in a freezer, in your body.
Protein powder does not occur naturally in a protein powder form.
Yeah, but it can be made in there.
Yeah, but we can freeze
frozen blood.
We can freeze blood and make frozen red blood cells.
I don't want it to get off topic, but the main thing is, even though it may have, the main thing is that protein powder isn't against the spirit of sport. We don't need EPO to survive. We need some protein,
especially the intense training regimes they have. It actually might benefit their health to take protein supplements.
But that can still be gotten from naturally occurring food. And you're also associating artificial is bad, natural is good. That's not always true. There's plenty of training that is good for athletes that is basically sat down and designed by a human who thinks, right, this is going to do this is going to do this, and we're going to plan out the training regime like this.
Very quick response, because I want to get a couple more questions and then submissions.
Just very quickly, all I'll say is that I'll go back to the point, the spirit of sport is about the human spirit, body and mind. It's not about objects, it's not about facilities, it's not about clothing, it's about the human self. And
okay. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 questions for each side, and then you're not going to get answers to them directly, they're going to come in the summations. Anyone who has already spoken, put your hands down, because I'm not asking you again, it's just not happening. So I'll go to yourself first.
You're saying that...
Again, school name and to the side.
Peter Magnus in College. You're saying that overtraining is a big problem, that it actually already leads to health problems, but if you take a cocktail of EPO drugs that are level playing field, we're surely not less playing field so we're going to resort back to overtraining. That plus the drugs will make a more dangerous cocktail.
Okay, and yourself?
Our team in Delaware School. To Michael, at the beginning of the debate you said that the proposition admitted defeat in saying that we couldn't catch, or there was no way we could possibly catch all people who dope. you said we should eradicate them completely. Later on, you then agreed with the proposition that said, by saying that regulating doping was already incredibly hard. The former head of the World Anti-Doping Agency, Dick Cloud, has estimated that about 10% of athletes dope every year. However, only about 2.2% of tests actually come up positive. How can you possibly say that we can catch everyone who dopes in the future?
Okay, going right into the corner.
The first speaker for the David O'Connor, St. Thomas College. The first speaker for the proposition said they would like to put the money that would be saved from NHS or something along those lines and somewhere else. But surely, if there's so many negative impacts from taking the performance drugs, then the NHS is going to be used up treating more people for more strokes, heart attacks, heart disease, training from weightlifting and Tour de France bodybuilding on an already strained system.
Okay, and one final question.
At some point there will be a
name, school.
Jack Ward and St. Thomas College, at some point there will be a limit to the amount of records being broken. It's like beyond human capabilities. A limit to the fastest time to complete 100 metres or the longest to throw a javelin. So, do you not think that drugs may be necessary to begin pushing the limits and breaking records again?
Okay, so as I said, we're not going to get answers to those now, so you're each going to have 1 minute in your summation speech. We'll go in the order that you spoke earlier on. I'll knock on the table after 30 seconds. So, we'll start with Ben O'Kane.
So the points today I think were raised were quite interesting. We had a great debate. I'd like to respond mainly to the second point that was raised by the sir in the back. He suggested that by using PEDs the cost of the NHS would increase. I think this is simply not true, because the top athletes who are using a lot of PEDs will not want to use the NHS because it's inefficient in many ways, and the response times which they have are too long, or the response times are too great versus the private healthcare system, which they'd be more likely using if they were at the top level. To conclude our argument, I think that the most important thing is that the current law is mostly unenforceable. As the statistic was raised, only 2.2% of the 10% who dope annually are caught. And by not allowing PEDs, we're creating a black market for drugs which is simply not safe and in the best interests of athletes. Thank you.
To conclude, I would reiterate that performance-enhancing drugs have no place in a gym, changing room, or any sports field. These type of drugs can be just as harmful as the illegal ones sold on the street. The second speaker admitted himself that it's not the most desirable thing to have been pumped full of drugs. He is fully backing our argument. We want a natural performance and breaking records naturally. They said as well that sports and ethics are completely different things, but I think they go hand in hand. So I'll just sum up by saying this. If you were an amateur cyclist, would injections of EPO or blood transfusions allow you to go faster? Sure, an electric motor on the bike would work better. But what's the point? The meaning of cycling, like the meaning of every sport worth a name, is in the value it fosters, the particular forms of human excellence it exhibits, and the dedication each individual shows in perfecting his or her natural talents. Thank you.
And I'll go to the final bit.
Just to address the previous speaker's argument, I would like to make it clear we are not necessarily encouraging that people take as many drugs as they can. We're just saying that they should be able to. There's a difference between saying you should do something and you should be allowed to do something. I would like to address the point raised about overtraining. I don't think it will lead to more overtraining. Now athletes, the only way they can go is to train harder and harder, and that presents a significant risk to their health, whereas performance-enhancing drugs could actually reduce the amount of overtraining. And I would just like to surmise my entire argument. This system that we currently have is unfair in that it only allows the people who break the rules to succeed. This system does not increase the competitiveness of sport, and it does not increase the fairness of sport.
And we'll go to Michael to close the debate.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. Great debate. First of all, comment to a point that was raised in the floor questions. about there'll eventually be a limit. I don't think there will be. Just a few hundred years ago, it was thought that a 4-minute mile was impossible, but that was achieved, and that's what makes sports so exciting. People are continually pushing themselves and disciplining themselves to create new and exciting records, and that's what it's all about. And performance-enhancing drugs will just undermine that completely. The word level playing field was thrown around quite a lot today. A level playing field is a strange concept which may never actually achieve, given the genetic and geographical differences between individuals. Elite athletes are by definition physical anomalies. We must not turn these physical anomalies into chemical clones. Thank you.
And I thank all 4 of our speakers for what has been a very good debate. So we'll now move very quickly to brief judges' feedback, if that's possible, before you have your deliberations. So if I can start with feedback for Methody, I'll start with Gary.
Yeah, it's very high standard, I must say, so I don't have much to say to either of you. I think Methody, when we're looking at the criteria that's used by the World Organisation, that drugs enhance performance, that they harm health, and that they harm the spirit of sport, your argument could have had a lot more sympathy if you had accepted at the start that these drugs shouldn't harm health. It's difficult. You find yourself in sort of a position where you're almost arguing that people should be able to take as many of these as they want, whether they're dropping dead on the golf course or the track or whatever the case may be. And I think that sort of was a difficult position to come from, and maybe didn't have as much sympathy as it could have had, because you have a lot of other good points about levelling the playing field. Essentially what you were saying was the spirit of sport is in fact being harmed by the way it's done at the minute, and that what you want to do is allow performance enhancing drugs to the point but stop before they would harm health, and that's the limit, and it would have given you a lot more room to respond to the points that the other side were throwing at you. And just one other point is be careful not to overstate your point, Ben. In terms of, you did accuse him of wanting people to die by not being able to get blood transfusions, and it's easy done, but it's a very easy position to be attacked for, and you were attacked for it.
Okay, Gerard?
Just at the outset, from Methodist point of view, the topic you had was a difficult one to actually speak for, to be honest with you, because you have huge moral arguments against the use of drugs in sport. So yeah, I would have to agree that you had a very, very difficult task there, and I think you did extremely well. Ben, I thought your opening was very, very good. That's Ben McCain, sorry. Ben Porter, I thought you were a bit slow to start, but you did rise to the occasion. Okay, and in fact, you were left really to justify. You were sort of Ben O'Kane. You sort of left the other Ben Porter, to feel all of the abuse in terms of people who felt against the whole idea of readings. You didn't really answer the question that I put to you in terms of you know yourself. You cannot. And Gary just hit the nail on the head when he said that, if you showed a wee bit of sympathy towards the idea, we cannot allow open access, but we certainly have to allow certainly limited access, maybe. In my view, you didn't address that whole area of policing, because top level sports people are obsessional. I know, because I've lived with a couple of them, okay, and they are, if you get open access to something that is likely to enhance your performance, then you definitely will access. Okay. So I think that's the
okay, and Leslie?
I would say, just something I said, that confident performance from both sides, and I really did enjoy the debate tonight. For Methodist College, there being some constructive feedback, I would say some of your arguments were not as convincing as I would like them to have been. And I think just an example, you could have brought in more concise facts to support some of your arguments. Just give an example, you made reference that the current laws are not being effective, and you give a percentage figure for that, but really there's the counter argument to that being, what would the levels be if the monitoring wasn't in place and you weren't able to support that. But otherwise I think you work together well as a team.
Okay, and if we can now get feedback for the St Columns team, we'll start again with Gary.
Again, very little to say. Be careful about saying too much or going too far. I was asking you a question and you answered it, which was that it's going on anyway, what do we do about it? And you answered it very well, and you said, look, that means we need to get better, we need to enforce the ban that is there at the minute. That's the answer. Then you went on to say, and they've only given one example, Lance Armstrong. There are lots of other examples. They didn't come back at you with it, but you opened the door there to them coming back at you with just fact after fact after fact after fact and saying, you say there's only one example, Lance Armstrong. So you'd answered the question, you'd answered it well. Be careful about saying too much sometimes and opening the door too wide. Other than that, Andrew, you got a wee bit tripped up towards the end there, and you tripped your fingers while you were thinking, and I always have a tendency to do that. I look up whenever I'm thinking and look up into my head, but remember that silence is your friend. It doesn't appear as long a pause to all of us in the room as it does appear to you, but by clicking your fingers you draw attention to it, just to say.
And Jared?
I thought again, excellent work from both teams. I thought that it was a very passionate moral argument that came across. It also came across that you were honest in your conviction in terms of the moral aspects. You give good examples to support. I thought in the fact that you supported your examples with the effects on young people with the PEDs. You did take the opportunity, you jumped on the opportunity to get the debate back on stream. In fact, when you were accused of endangering health or killing people or whatever it was, I can't remember. And you did, and you kept harking back to the whole idea of the spirit of sport. Again, but I think that's a very purist way to look at it. On the other side, I know that there are holes in the current ban, there are holes in the use of things like creatine and tryptophan and other substances. They're just borderline in terms of effects on the body, harmful effects.
And finally, Leslie.
I thought you had a good understanding of the issues and provided some well-articulated answers, especially to some of the questions from the proposition. I'll go with the rest of the judges as well on their comments. I enjoyed the humour.
Okay, a big thank you to all of our judges so much. The judges will now leave the room to make their decision, and if you guys want to stay seated for just 2 seconds, so if the individual judges are leaving as well, brilliant. Okay, so we're now going to do what really actually means nothing because the judges are gone, but I like doing it anyway. We're going to have a house vote. So if I can see those who were in favour of the motion and in favour of the young man on this side. Okay, and those against.
It's
well,
clear.
I don't know, it's a bit close to call that one.
It's very tight, yeah.
As I said, to be perfectly honest, their view means nothing.
Yeah.
It's 3 people out there, so we'll see what happens. So, thank you to our speakers. Take a few moments rest until we wait for the judges. Okay, thank you very much to our judges. So if we can start, firstly, with the Best Individual Awards. If there's someone nominated to announce that?
Yeah, really well done to everyone in the room. I really enjoyed listening to just everyone really grappling with the issues. You tend to find, even at university, people don't actually do this in debates and employers and so on, so it's really, really refreshing to actually hear about the young people really grappling with the issues. I've loads of notes here of what everyone said, different ways, different people grappled with it, but different interesting facts, really looked at the sort of social political context outside of it and so on. Well done to all the speakers as well. I looked at both the floor and those on the panel, but I really think that Rachel Hastings. I really liked a lot of your questions, especially the points you brought up. I thought they were really well thought out, really sort of got the panelists to really think about what they just said and so on, so congratulations.
Okay, so I believe judges have nominated someone to give the results.
That's me. We thought it was an exceptionally high standard. I've said it before, and I really did think it was a very well argued debate. You all addressed all the key issues and argued your points very well. You also all spoke very well and presented very well. And what I liked as well, what we all liked, was that you all worked very well as a team, and you referred to each other. And you responded to the other side whenever whoever went second was responding to the arguments that had just been raised beforehand, and you bounced off each other very well in the cross argument. Method, I think you had the more difficult end of this particular argument, and we did take that into account. Credit for that, for arguing the more difficult side. You still argued it very, very well. But in the end, we came down on the sides and columns.
And congratulations to St Columns. Then we'll be seeing you in Glasgow next year. So I thank all of our judges and all the speakers for what probably the most entertaining debate I've seen today. So a big thank you to everyone and congratulations again.
Look, I know everyone's very keen to get away, but so while you're putting your coat and stuff and getting ready to make your way home, there are a few people we need to thank this evening. The first of whom are the Welcome Trust, who support these competitions don't have. The second are Litterific for hosting us in this wonderful space and feeding us one of my favourite tea breaks I've ever seen at a debate. The other are the judges, who give up their time freely to be here. They don't get paid. Thanks to Leo and also Sarah for helping run the event. But also, and most importantly, thanks to your teachers. You don't know anything without them. You are a credit to them. They do more work than any of us, and we see the least of them. Can we please have a massive cheer? And I hope we see you all again debating soon.
Thank you.